Hey everyone, Micah here with EbikeSchool.com, and believe it or not, it has been a year and a half since I bought this electric mini truck from China, had it shipped over and unboxed it in front of all of you guys. At this point, a lot of people have been asking me, how's it been holding up over the last 18 months or so? And depending on whether you were in the group of people who loved this thing or people who hated this thing in the comments on all my videos on it, you will either be pleasantly surprised or annoyed to hear that it has actually held up incredibly well. I'm going to take you around and show you how the truck's doing. I also have a number of upgrades, both that I've already done that I'm going to share with you and some that I'm going to do in this video. I want to add a tow hitch in the back, so I'm going to weld that sucker on. It really needs a bed liner, so we're going to do a paint-in bed liner and a few other things. So come along with us, let's check out how the truck's been doing. All right, now real quick, I just want to let you know that I'm going to be giving away a free e-bike at the end of this video, specifically this e-bike. This is the Himaway Escape Pro, an awesome electric bike, so make sure you stick around to the end of this video where I'll give you all the details on how you could be the one to get your hands on that e-bike. All right, now back to the truck. So first off, a few upgrades you can see around the truck. I went ahead and changed out the tires. It came with these street tires, which would have been fine if you were using this as like a neighborhood electric vehicle on the street. But since we're using it as a basically work truck off-road here on my parents' ranch, we added these tires on. We also spray painted the hubcaps black because they looked kind of gaudy before in that fake chrome. So I think not only does this look better, but it works a lot better in the pasture land out here, especially when it's wet. Those street tires just were not great, so it's good to have these off-road tires that just make the ride a lot better too. You guys probably already saw the video where I added the solar panel on top. Believe it or not, the truck is actually charging right now, and that's really helped out because we have to charge it about half as much as we used to. Maybe we plug it in now every 2 to 3 weeks. And you might remember from one of my last videos that I said probably the worst part about the truck is that every 3 weeks or so, like clockwork, the rear view mirror would just fall off of the windshield here with that suction cup. So we went ahead and just put some silicone on there and just basically glued it right onto the windshield so it stopped falling off. But now I want to take you around and look a little more detail at how the truck has actually held up over the last 18 months as really a work truck, since we have not babied this thing. I mean, we've been using it day in, day out for work jobs around the site here, hauling things around, doing dirt moving yard waste, all sorts of things. So we've really been putting this thing through its paces, and it has not complained one bit. Now I know a lot of people were really worried about rust. They figured this thing would rust out in a matter of weeks or months, and it actually hasn't happened. I don't know what they did to the metal on this thing. Maybe it was like coated before it was painted at the factory, but even places where we've scratched through the paint, it hasn't really begun to rust. Let me bring you in closer here. If you take a look at the bare paint here, you can see places where it's scratched up. You know, we've used like a pitchfork and stuff, hauling stuff out of here. It's not really begin to rust. It just goes straight through the paint to the bare metal. But we're not seeing really any surface rust on that metal. You know, you can see just how beaten up that the inside of the bed is getting. So I'm gonna go add a bed liner soon. Actually, I've got the paint already ready. So in a few minutes, we're gonna paint that sucker in and see how that painted bed liner works. Before we do that though, let's take a look under the bed here, take a look at the frame and see how that's holding up. Don't mind me, just using my dump truck. So one other quick upgrade we did here, this was real simple, but we just added some rubber isolator here because the bed would kind of bang on the frame here because of this dumping feature. So with these rubber isolators, we just removed that little bit of banging noise. Despite the somewhat shoddy frame welding, everything is held up obviously just fine. You know, we use it every day. But if you look at the actual steel here, there's basically no rust anywhere. If we even get down underneath where it's always, you know, wet and dirty from just driving around doing all this work, but nothing is rusting out. If you come down here and look at the motor, funny thing is that fan on the end, I actually took the cover off the day we got it because I noticed that it was a bit bent in shipping. I meant to bang out that bend in it and put it back on to protect that fan. I never did, so a year and a half now it's been driving around without any protection on there, and that's obviously just fine as well. If you take a look at the underside of the bed, and there's just absolutely zero rust in there. I mean, you can see with just what a tough life this thing leads, the fact that it's staying in such good condition. Actually, so the one thing that's rusted here is the VIN plate is just totally rusted. I guess they just use mild steel for that, uncoated. But that's the only thing on here that's really rusted to any serious degree. This hydraulic ram they put in here is still massively oversized, but look how nice that thing is. Now I did get new springs for the truck that are much lower compression. I think these are just way too stiff. So with any luck, I'll get those put on in this video as well. And there's the controller you can see. I mean, the thing just looks so nice for a truck that spends so much time working outside like this. I don't really use the infotainment screen, but I guess that's fine as well. The upholstery even, I know it looks super cheap, but there's no tears, nothing. It's not even really worn from all the time that we've spent in here. The passenger seat doesn't really get much use, so that one looks pristine. You can see that the driver's seat's a lot more worn in, but still, I mean, you'd think after a year and a half, if this was super cheap, that you'd see tears and, you know, rips and runs in this fake leather stuff, and it stays really surprisingly nice. And there's one other spot here on the bracket that holds the roof rack on, where it arrived with a little bit of paint chipped off of the bracket, and there was a little bit of rust forming. Seems like they used a different steel for these than the actual body and frame. For 18 months, I would say that's pretty good compared to the original state it came in. All the other little motors and switches throughout everything are also still working. Let's see, the windows still work great. Let's see the locks. There we go, electric locks still work. The funny thing is this remote with the key actually went through the washing machine once. I'm not gonna say which family member left the key in their pocket when it went through, but we just dried it out afterwards and it worked just fine. The only problem is when you go to open the little like switchblade key, it doesn't open all the way. Guess I should have bought American. Let's try out the air conditioning as well. Switch is on this side. Oh, I guess I should turn the vehicle on. Unlock. All right, AC is on. The compressor is really loud, but it always has been. And yeah, we've got cold air coming out. Let's turn that off. I mean, I feel like I'm jinxing it by saying this, but everything has just been perfect. That doesn't mean that there isn't room for improvement. So I think we're gonna start on the bed back there and paint in that bed liner. So why don't you come with me, we'll set that up. To prepare for a new bed liner, we started by washing out the bed to give it at least a fighting chance of being a bit clean before we got started. There are a few plastic plugs and access panels in the bed that go on the inner wall of the double wall construction, and they cover access holes to things like bolts for the taillights, tailgate handle, etc. And then, to make sure there was a decently rough surface for the bed liner to adhere to, we gave the bed a light sanding. Since I didn't have a battery-powered sander and there were no outlets in sight, I used this Lithium portable power station I've been testing to turn my dad's corded sander into a battery sander. While I was working on that, my dad pulled the tailgate off since it's going to be a lot easier to do the lining without it connected. I'm more of a slap it on kind of guy, but my dad appreciates the finer details, and so since the truck lives at his place and he gets most of the use out of it, I listened to his suggestion and we laid down some tape lines to get a nice edge. I would soon come to appreciate why that was such a good suggestion, as we'll see in just a minute. Since I'm kind of a broad strokes guy, I went for the roller, and my dad embraced the precision of a paintbrush for the detail work. We're using this stuff called Durabac 18 polyurethane protective coating. This is not sponsored, it's just good stuff, so we went with it. It's also not cheap. This gallon was like 140 bucks. So if the company sees this and wants to send me another bucket for my next Weird Alibaba purchase, I won't say no. We use the smooth variant. There's also a textured one that's good for outdoor surfaces and stuff that you want to be non-slip, but we wanted this to be a smooth finish so it was easy to wash out and the dirt wouldn't get all trapped in a rough surface. At this point, my dad suggested we finally address those rusting roof rack hangers after a year and a half of watching them be pretty much the only part of the truck slowly corroding. So we pulled off the rack to file down the paint and get that rusty surface off so that we could see the bare metal, and then we painted on some self-etching primer that we could then later go back over to paint it white again. It ended up looking great, and I don't think we're going to have any rust issues here anymore. For the bed liner, we did 2 coats total, and then we pulled the tape off while the second coat was still wet to try and get a good edge. I'll admit that it was definitely worth taking the time to do it nicely, because that looks pretty darn professional if you ask me. Alright, so the bed is done. I am super excited with how this turned out. I mean, I think it just looks great. I think this is probably better than it was when it came. If you remember, it originally had that silly little fabric bed liner, which basically got torn up in a week or two, so we were just using the bare metal. And I think this looks awesome. Let me bring you in for the close-up here. It's got a little bit of texture to it. I think part of that is just from the kind of cheap brushes that were falling apart a little bit. So I think some of this is just a little bit of the fuzz from the brushes that got into the paint. But the surface, I mean, it just feels like solid. Oh man. But this is super nice. This is going to be great. And also gives you a chance to see the construction here, by the way. I mean, look, this is double wall construction. All of this, that's why this thing has been so sturdy. This is not just like a single sheet of sheet metal. Not only is this bent with these channels to keep it stronger, but it's 2 walls. So that's why this thing is so solid. I mean, you've seen how much we've loaded up in this thing. Rocks, bricks, logs. It's not just for hauling mulch and dirt. So, you know, I could not be happier with how this bed liner turned out. So this is going to be great for the future because we don't have to worry about being as gentle on it as we were before. Not that we were that gentle, but you saw just, you know, like how many shovel marks and from the pitchfork and everything was in it. And now I think this liner is going to hold up a lot better. So I'm excited for that. Oh, one other thing that I'm still working on. I know a lot of people complain that the tailgate doesn't go down to a full 180 degrees here with the bed. It's also annoying for me. It's something I want to change. We've been looking at either changing the mounting points of these arms here or potentially swapping these out for cables. I'm not like a truck guy in general. This is my first truck, but my sister recently got a Silverado and I noticed that it doesn't have like chains or arms like this. It actually has a steel cable. It's coated in some kind of plastic, which seems nice because it doesn't rattle around like these do. And so I think I'm going to look and see if I can find a truck with steel cables that would be the right length for this. And then I can just get the right length and make sure it's laying nice and flat. And it'll solve the flat tailgate issue and it will not be rattling around like these are. So that's one of the other upgrades on the list. As you can see, it's never really a finished project. From here, the next big project was replacing the coil springs with much softer springs to try and make the ride less harsh. The original springs were so darn stiff that they didn't even really compress under the weight of the truck. We were able to pull them out basically with just loosening the cups that hold them on. But the new springs I got were a bit longer and actually needed to be compressed to get them to fit in there, which we tried to do with bar clamps and utterly failed. So that meant we just had to completely unbolt the control arm to get it to drop low enough for us to get the new longer springs in. Though my dad was pretty happy about the longer springs and kept saying how cool it'd be to soon have a quote-unquote lifted truck. The cool thing here, by the way, is that we didn't have to rent a spring compressor, which you might need on a bigger vehicle, since the whole suspension here can be removed with just 4 bolts, illustrating how simple it is to work on these mini trucks with minimal tools and equipment. Once the new spring was in, it was just a matter of retightening it in place and then bolting the control arm back on. Alright, so we just got the first spring swapped on the other side, and you can see what a huge difference it makes. We still have over here the original spring, and there's basically no suspension if you push down on this thing. And over here, if you push down, now suddenly there's some suspension in the truck. So here's the old spring we just took out. These are the new ones we're putting in. These are 125 pound. I have no idea what these are. I'm guessing they're 400 at least. You can see the huge difference here just pushing on these 2 springs. What a difference in compression you get. The other thing is that these are maybe 2 inches or so longer, and they compress more, so that ended up giving us about a ½ inch higher ride height. So I guess now I've got a lifted truck. Then we basically did the same thing on the other side of the rear end. Now I will say the rear was a lot easier than the front since there was more room to get your arms in with the bed lifted up, but the front wasn't too bad either. It also gave us a chance to put different bushings in one of the front control arms that had been making a knocking sound since the truck arrived a year and a half ago, and that really seemed to help. I will say though that after finishing this project, I immediately went and bought my dad a set of ratcheting box wrenches, because that would have saved a probably solid hour or 2 of grunting and swearing with our arms pressed up against the springs. Now I'm filming, I'm doing the hardest one. Film that easy one down there. Yeah, well, you can edit to make it look like this is like 6 seconds. My dad has most tools you can imagine, but those were somehow missing from his collection, and he's given me so much help on these and other projects over the years that I think an early Father's Day present this year was warranted. If you could slide back and get sort of a bigger picture, sort of setting the scene. Your arm.
shoved up inside the suspension of a mini truck. Yeah, we got the seat all set. Here, turn to the camera. Say hi, Micah. Hi, Micah. That's good. Okay. Back in close.
After a long day of projects, my dad then got to test out the suspension first, and it was a huge difference, which he demonstrated with some celebratory donuts. Okay, I cannot tell you how much nicer it drives with the new springs in it. It is incredible. It finally has real suspension. If you remember just how solid it was before, it was as if the springs weren't even there. You might be able to notice is that the suspension is not great. But other than the mystery clunking and the suspension that could use some existence, I would say that I am really quite excited about this truck. I'm pleasantly surprised with how well it works and just how much of a real vehicle it is.
Okay, I think your viewers are gonna throw up.
And now if you look, I mean, there's real suspension in this truck now. It is just a night and day difference. And we got a lot of that noise out too by putting a little bit of bushing material in those front bushings for the suspension. It just makes it a lot quieter. With those old springs, I mean, it barely budged when we had a bunch of weight in here. We had, I think, about 700 or 800 pounds of dirt in here once. So, you know, we've put a lot of weight here and it was fine, but now we're gonna have to make sure that it doesn't sag too much in the back because we got those lighter springs. Like you can see just with my weight, we've got a little bit. I'm about $150, so compare that to 800 pounds of dirt, and we'll have to see how this holds up. But the fact that it's riding a little bit higher might give us a little more room to squish down there. All in all though, I am super happy with how that suspension turned out. The last major upgrade we wanted to do was to add a tow hitch. You'd think this would be easy, like just weld on a 2-inch receiver and call it a day. The problem is the frame is kind of strange here in the back because of the dump feature, so there's not really a frame member low down because it would interfere with the dumping. So we decided to just create an assembly that would mount to the rear axle with a big set of U-bolts, and we'd just carefully weld those U-bolts to the axle housing to prevent rotation. So we started with some steel plates that we could bolt through onto the housing, and then we welded some 1.5-inch square tubing onto those. I'm not an expert welder, but my dad's equipment is good enough that even an occasional welder like me can do something pretty decent. Those pieces of square tubing help us get far enough out to extend past the motor, which is also mounted to the axle. From there, we welded on a crossbar to tie it all together, and that's what the 2-inch Hitch receiver gets welded onto. Now, the original plan was to weld the U-bolts onto that axle housing, but then we realized that with some frame members up above where we were working, we could actually drop some threaded rod down from there and support the tongue weight pushing down on the tow hitch. So we used a plumb bob to find the right spot, drilled through our assembly and the frame, and then we slightly modified our plan to go in that direction. We also had no idea how thick the axle housing was going to be, and so we were a bit nervous about having to weld onto it and potentially blowing right through the wall. Then we just hit the whole thing with some self-etching primer so it wouldn't rust out, and while we were waiting for that to dry, my dad decided to fix the fact that the rear view camera was always angled down to the point where you were kind of looking at the ground about 6 feet behind the bumper. Turns out you can just pop the camera out and then bend the bumper around until the hole is straight, though we discovered an interesting little issue after we put the camera back in the bumper.
Well, we need to turn it a little bit, but it's working. You ready?
Yeah. Wrong way. That's still the wrong way.
Well, I know, but I gotta go in the direction of the thread. You get it close?
You got another 90 degrees. Yeah, another 45. Another 10. No, that was 15. Yeah, that's probably good enough.
It's good enough.
From there, we just had to bolt on the tow hitch assembly one last time and it was finally done. 18 months later, we can finally tow. And I don't know about you guys, but what better way to test it out than by towing around my $1,000 Chinese electric boat that I ordered off Alibaba.
retrieving crashed drone. Take one. This is Micah's dad reporting to you on the crashed drone. We're good.
Phew, still works. All right, so we got the hitch finally finished up. It was a decent amount of work, but I gotta say, I think it looks really great. I mean, it looks factory, like that's the way it was supposed to come. I feel like I should send this design to the Chang-li factory and let them know this is what they should be building onto these things. Because it just, I mean, I think it really ties the thing together. And as a work truck, I mean, it's like, you know, a shame that it didn't have a hitch for a year and a half. So I'm glad we finally got that straightened out. And since my dad gets a lot more seat time in the truck than me since it lives at my parents' property, I thought it'd be good to get his perspective as a fairly long-term owner. You've had it for a year and a half now, a lot more time than I have. How's it been treating you?
It's been treating me great. You know, now that I have become more comfortable with its reliability and you know, what it can do and what it can't do, I'm using it actually more and more, you know, around our property.
Have you been getting any interesting comments? Now you've had it out a bit, people seeing it?
Yeah, people see it, and you know, there's just the same comments, but they're always very enjoyable. Recently we had a woman who drives for UPS, and I saw her dropping some packages off, and I wanted to try to help her. I actually wanted to get them straight into the truck to take down to the shop. And so I come whizzing up, and she's staring at it, and before I can even get out of the cab, she goes, "What is that?" And I start explaining to her what it is. I said, "But there's even more," and I hit the button, and she goes, "Don't tell me that's a dump bed." And it just starts to, and she pulled out her camera. She wanted a picture with it. I asked her if she wanted to get in it. You know, she got in it, took pictures. You know, it was really very cool. We've had semi-truck drivers come here making deliveries, and the semi guys will look at it and they'll go, you know, "This is really cool. What is this? Is that electric? Is that a solar panel?" People have literally extended their time here 10 or 15 minutes from their delivery route to talk about what's going on with the truck.
So we've done a bunch of upgrades. We did the tailgate, bed liner, changed the suspension, a few other things as well. How's it been treating you since the upgrades?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, the suspension upgrade was the single most important thing we've done to this, because it was so hard and so jarring. Now it has a suspension. I mean, you can go like this and there's rebound, and you know, it compresses. It's now like a pleasure to drive because we've taken the jarring nature out of it.
Do you have any other updates, requests, things that you want to see us do to this that we haven't done yet?
I think we've got it pretty tricked out at this point. Now that we've got the towing hitch, now I think I'm going to get a little utility trailer to hook to it, so when I'm doing things that require a bigger bed or just a little bit more space, you know, I can just hook a little lightweight utility trailer to it, and it'll be that much easier. We got a little bit of lift out of it with those coil springs, and actually the turning radius improved because we were able to turn the wheel tighter. It was nimble before because, you know, it's so tiny. The turning radius was not great, but now the turning radius is actually pretty good. I think you took some pictures of me doing, you know, like stupid donuts and whatever to kind of get a sense of, you know, what the radius is on the turning circle.
Oh yeah, you were quite a ballerina there.
And of course, being able to pull the boat with it, you know, that's kind of cool. You know, seeing an electric boat being pulled behind, you know, a mini electric truck, I mean, that kind of says it all. You know, these are fully functional vehicles. Are they right for everybody? Absolutely not. Is everybody going to want one? Absolutely not. But for the right situation, and I think we have one here on this property, these things are just perfect.
Okay, now like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I'm going to be giving away a free e-bike. This is the Himalaya Escape Pro. This is part of a new program that I'm working on. It's called E-Bikes for Good, where at the end of every one of my videos here on eBike School, I give away an e-bike. Generally, these are going to go to people who are down on their luck, someone who could make a big impact in their life, someone who really needs a new e-bike, but maybe they can't afford it, or they're in a tough place in life. Occasionally, I'm going to open up these giveaways to everybody so that it's not just need-based, so that everyone can be included, but most of the time these are really going to be focused on people who it can really make a big change, a positive impact in their life, because I've always felt so strongly about the ability for electric bikes to really change people's lives and really open up their opportunities. So a little about the bike that I'm giving away this week. This is the Himalaya Escape Pro. Big thanks to Himalaya for sponsoring this giveaway. I love this bike. This thing is awesome, and that's why I'm so excited to send it out to somebody. This is a fast and fun, full suspension, fat tire electric moped. Now, of course, this thing has pedal assist. You can pedal it, but most people are going to use this like a moped. It's really a great transportation type bike, not just for recreation, but really getting around town, doing all sorts of things that you would generally use a larger vehicle for. You can absolutely do with this e-bike. I love the fact that it's full suspension, and especially with those fat tires, whether you're on-road or off-road, it can handle both situations. It's got a powerful motor, 750 watts continuous, but even more peak power. It's got a big battery, 840 watt hours from that 48 volt, 17.5 amp hour pack. So you're gonna get around 40 miles on throttle or even more on pedal assist. It's got a lot of storage options, so there's that rear rack, but you can also add a front basket. So you can turn this almost into like a small format cargo bike. It's got built-in LED lighting, it's got those fenders. Basically, this is just an awesome e-bike, and I am super excited to get this out to somebody. So how is this going to work? The way that you can enter is you can go to EbikeSchool.com/ebikesforgood. The URL is down below here. There's an entry form there, so fill it out. Let me know what your situation is, what's going on in your life, why would an electric bike really help you. I'll go through all those entries, they'll all be put together, and a random entry will be selected to be the winner of the Himalaya Escape Pro. If you already entered a few weeks ago in my last video, you don't need to enter again, it's already in the system there, so you'll be automatically entered. If you want to read the full rules, they're over there on the site, EbikeSchool.com/ebikesforgood. So make sure you check it out, make sure you enter, because I am super excited to get this awesome e-bike out to someone. Speaking of being excited, I'm also excited to announce the winner of the e-bike from my last video. There were so many great entries. It was so tough reading through them, and that's also why I'm glad that this is a random system, because everyone was so deserving. But the randomly selected entrant was Jorge. So congratulations, Jorge. I know that things have been tough lately. You can see Jorge's entry below there. He sounds like a great guy. He's in his 50s, recently divorced though, going through a tough time. Car's not working, so he gets around by pedal bicycle, but in such a hilly area, it's very tough to actually get to work and do important things like that. So I'm very excited to get a new e-bike out to you, Jorge. I hope it's going to really change things around for you and make getting to work and getting around a lot easier. If you want to be like Jorge and hopefully win a free e-bike, make sure you enter the EbikeSchool.com E-Bikes for Good giveaway program, and I hope to get one out for you. So that's it, guys. That's all I've got for you today. I hope you enjoyed the 18-month update on the truck, and I think it showed that, what a lot of people thought was going to be a bucket of bolts and just problems down the road has so far held up incredibly well. The one or two very minor things were easily fixed with a bit of glue here or a bit of elbow grease there, and some of the upgrades that we've done have really turned this into an awesome work truck. If anything, 18 months later, this is a much better truck than I received, and it was already pretty great when I got it. So thanks for tuning in. Last but not least, before I go, it is time to announce the winner of the giveaway from my last video. And the randomly selected commenter who will win a copy of one of my books is Zach Art. So congratulations, just let me know which one of my books you'd like. You can choose from DIY Lithium Batteries, DIY Solar Power, The Ultimate Do-It-Yourself E-Bike Guide, or my latest book, The Electric Bike Manifesto. And anybody else who wants a chance to win one of my books for free, all you have to do is put a comment down below. You can say anything you like in the comment section, and hopefully you will be the randomly selected commenter at the end of my next video. For anyone who doesn't want to wait that long to hopefully win a copy of my book, you can always find them on Amazon. All right, thanks for watching, everybody. See you here next time.